Welcome everyone back to Parsha Mastery, another amazing week we're going to have together. By the way, for all those who come in person and those who watch in person, our class has grown significantly. You know, it's like in many places I go with the family, people bump into me. People I've never met before say we listen to the Parsha Shir every week. So for all those who come in person and those who watch at home, if you watch it and you think this is helpful for a friend, a cousin, somebody, and you share it with them, you double your mitzvah, because now every single second that we go through the parsha, we're reading from the Chumash, you're getting a mitzvah from the Torah, one of the highest mitzvot. Now you share that with somebody else who also gets to do a mitzvah, and because they did a mitzvah on your behalf, you get a double mitzvah too. So spread the Torah, B'ezrat Hashem. Hopefully this program that we've done since Bereshit, we're getting to the finish line, should help many people, and it's all recorded. People could watch it while they drive, while they cook, whatever they're in the gym. We have some people who are on a treadmill, cardiologist that watches our shir every week while he's running on the treadmill. So let's start. Tonight's class should be for the full refuah shlema of one of my close friend's father, Morris Rabbi Eliyahu ben Victoria, for refuah shlema of Avshin Mordechai ben Shana Shoshana and Tova bat Tzipora, and as well Efrat Orna bat Homa, as well for Ilui Nishmat Moshe ben Chalil. So this week's parsha is Parashat Re'eh. The word Re'eh means to see. So this is how this week's parsha starts. It says, Re'eh anochi noten lifnechem hayom habracha u'klala. Look, see, I place before you a blessing and a curse. So the option is pretty much there. And what's the blessing? The blessing is if you listen to the commandments of Hashem. The curse, if you don't listen to the commandments of Hashem, your God, and you stray away from the path that I command you today. And Rashi says, what does this mean, this whole idea of, and you shall see? What's this whole idea of seeing? Because we know many times we say if you don't listen, but the whole parsha is named after the word re'eh, which means to see. And something that we've talked about many times comes back home in this first word. Hashem is saying, if you look around the world, you could see yourself. This is not a hidden secret. The people who listen to the Torah and the mitzvot, you see the blessings that they have in their life. The people who choose not to listen to the Torah and mitzvot, you see the curses they have in their life. This is not some, mystery secret that, we do the commandments, of course, because Hashem tells us, and there's reward in the next world, but it's not just about the next world. It's about this world, that if you fulfill the mitzvot, you're going to be blessed in this world as well. So that's what it says. It says see, because if you look around, even today, you'll see it. I've shared this maybe 8 months ago, so we'll refresh our memory. I shared a very interesting scenario that my rabbi, some people in this room know him, Rav Steinhertz from New York, that he once shared that he was on a bus in Israel. He was on a bus, in an area that, had a lot of secular Jews, and he's with a secular Jew sitting on a bus, and he doesn't say anything. He's just doing his own thing, reading his sefer, and the secular Jew comes and says, "What is all this religious business that you do? You really think, you're doing the right thing?" And he just goes back and forth. My rabbi was like, "I didn't say anything to you. Like, what do you want from me?" And once this person starts kind of like attacking and saying, "Oh, this whole religion thing is not true," my rabbi gives him an answer that I think is so practical. He says, "Look, I'm in a win-win and you're in a lose-lose." What? What does that mean? And I think this is something very true for today too. He says, "I'm in a win-win because you see, it's not secret. It's not hidden. You go in the religious areas of Israel, you see how religious people live. The people who live with God in their life. Now, I'm not talking about, Hasidish. I'm talking about anyone. The one could be from any sect of Judaism. When you have God in your life, you have purpose. You have meaning. So even in this world, my rabbi was telling this guy, I'll be happy. I'll live a good life. And if everything that I believe is true and correct, which I know it will be true and correct, I believe the promises that God gives us, then I also want in the next world too. So I want in this world and I want in the next world. It says, but you're in a lose-lose. Because you don't have one day of the week where your kids sit behind the Shabbat table with you and could sit down and you guys can have a conversation because you don't keep Shabbat. You don't have, the idea that when something goes not your way and you go through a struggle in your life, you don't have that purpose and meaning behind you to say, this was from God. So in this world, you're constantly anxious, you're constantly nervous, you're constantly worried. And as well, let's just say everything ends up being true, then you've also missed out on the next world. So you're in a lose-lose and I'm in a win-win. And I think it's a very, obviously, my rabbi wouldn't walk around saying that to people, but once this person kind of came and threw out his thing, he says, and this is a very true, and this is what Re'eh sees. It says, look, you see clearly. And it says, now, there's a very interesting idea, because Hashem says there's the blessing and there's the curse, but he still gives us the option. There's this idea that Hashem created the world with free will, meaning Hashem doesn't say, this is the right thing, and you have to do this, and this is your only option. Hashem says, you could choose this path, you could choose this path. I think this path will be better for you, it will lead to greater things, but at the end of the day, it's your decision. And like one way to explain it is like you go to a doctor. Let's just say our enemy, not ourselves, gets a sickness, gets a disease. He goes to the doctor says, look, you have this thing. If you do this and this and this, you take this medication, you change your life, you stop smoking, you eat healthier, you can probably remove this disease. And his doctor always has to explain the alternatives. And you also have the option of not doing anything. You could do nothing, continue your bad habits, and don't take this medicine that you need. And this is what's going to happen. Hashem knows what's the better path for us, but He still allows us to choose. And through the choosing, it's much more meaningful and it's much more real because it came from us. It wasn't by force. We've said this before. Imagine if you're forced to do something. You're forced to give flowers to your wife. It's not the same value as I did it because I wanted to do it. I did it because I believed this was the right thing to do. So now it says, from here it moves on to a whole different category. It says, the pasuk moves on to say, now when you enter Israel, you're going to enter these places where all these other nations were there and they serve their avodah zarah, their idol worship. And it's a double language. It says, you shall surely destroy all the places. Abed ta'abedun is the same word said twice pretty much. You should destroy it all. And the question is, why say it double? The answer that Rashi gives is because, don't just damage it, completely, utterly destroy it. I'll give an example. Back in the day, there was something called the Nashera tree, which was a tree that they used specifically for avodah zarah. So the commandment was not just to go and get the tree that was used for avodah zarah and cut it down. You had to take it down from the roots and even burn it, because don't leave a remnant of something that's bad. Completely destroy it, number one. Number two, it says, destroy their altars, smash their pillars on the high mountains and hills. The Torah knew something very beautiful about our psyche. Hashem knew something very beautiful about our psyche, which was the power of influence. Imagine the Jewish people come from everywhere they've been, the desert, Egypt, all the places they've been, and now they enter a land where there's influences. There's still avodah zarah here, there's still a church here, there's still that church, and they're surrounded by it. The temptation could get to them. One of the rabbis from LA once gave an example. He said, you think about it, how much is a Super Bowl commercial for 20 seconds? If you look at the numbers, sometimes it's $10, $15 million, way more now these days, for a 15, 20-second commercial by Coke, Pepsi. Coke is still willing to go pay $20 million for 10 seconds, 15 seconds of your time. Why? Because they believe the power of influence of 15 seconds. They think that because now all these people watch the commercial about Coke, subconsciously next time they're in a supermarket and they want to choose between Pepsi and Coke, because they saw the commercial 3 months ago, they're going to choose Coke over Pepsi. And they've proven this enough that these people are willing to spend this much money. So the rabbi said that if a 15-minute commercial can influence us to make a change or decision, then of course all the influences we have left and right in our lives, of course, can affect us. A lesson for us in our lives, we say, what's the big deal? Send your kids to any school. It doesn't matter what school you send your kids to. It doesn't matter who your kids' friends are. It doesn't matter who our friends are. It doesn't matter what shows we watch. All these things, whether we realize it or don't realize it, has an influence on the next time how we act, the next time how we feel close to Hashem. So this is Hashem telling us about the power of influence. And then it says another interesting thing. It says, utzmachtem. It says, and you shall rejoice with your every undertaking. Sforno teaches us that one of the sources of serving Hashem with happiness is from here. Because we have a commandment to just do the mitzvot. But then there's another component that's connected to this, is when we do it with happiness, do it with joy. You have someone who's bitter, he comes to shul, he puts on his tefillin, he says Shema, he does the mitzvot, but he does it with bitterness. This pasuk is saying, you shall rejoice with all your undertakings, meaning every mitzvah that you do should be with happiness. If you want Judaism to last as well, the best thing is don't let it be bitter. I read somewhere else, there was this rabbi who, one of his children went off the derech. And he explained that this was one of his children, that during that time of his life, when the child was young, they wouldn't sing at the Shabbat table. I know it sounds kind of a little bit fanatic, but his logic was that for this child, he didn't get the same taste of love, of happiness of Judaism. For whatever it was, in that time of their lives, they didn't make Judaism so fun. It was more kind of like, this is what you have to do because you have to do it. The idea of making things in Judaism enjoyable, fun, practical, and when it's fun for ourselves, for our kids, when you learn something and you leave it like, wow, that felt so great, you want to do it again. You have a chavruta with someone and you're learning about a subject that you really don't enjoy, you'll come the first time, you'll come the second time. After 3 or 4 sessions, they'll start calling Rabbi, hey, I'm not feeling so good. I don't know. I have this thing that came up, that thing that came up, because you don't love it, because you don't enjoy it. When you enjoy it, it doesn't matter. I'm going no matter what it takes. That's all the first aliyah. We move on to the second aliyah, which talks about the specific place that Hashem chooses. It says, Ki you should only serve Hashem to the place that Hashem himself will choose to establish his name. There you shall seek it and come there. And again, it goes on and again it says, Ki amakom asher yivchar Hashem. So we just talked about smashing the idols of all the other nations. And the Torah is telling us, don't be like the other nations, where they just serve wherever they want. They see a tree, they just go and they worship and they do things their way. Instead, there's a home, there's a place, there's parameters, there's borders of how to serve Hashem. It's the way that Hashem himself commanded us, not the way that it was. So back in the desert, Judaism was, people did it wherever they wanted. Then it became centralized. The place that Hashem chose, really where the korbanot were brought, where the sacrifices were brought, became Yerushalayim, and specifically the Beit HaMikdash is where it actually occurred. And then we go on to a very nice idea about, people have a question of whether, we know the written Torah that we read from every single week in this class, every Shabbat we read from, that is given from God. Some people say, well, the oral Torah, the Gemara, the Talmud, how do I know this is also given by Hashem? How do I know the significance of this as well? Listen to this. Listen to what the pasuk in the second aliyah says. It says, it talks about now korbanot and how to slaughter. So it says, Moshe saying, you shall slaughter the animals as I have commanded you. So the mitzvah of shechitah. Right now we know there's all these rules of shechitah. So Moshe is saying, you shall do the shechitah as the way I've commanded you. Now I give everyone a task. Go through the whole Chumash and try to find the halachot, the rules of how to do shechitah. Even though it's such a big deal in Judaism, it's nowhere in the Chumash. So what is Moshe saying? Do it as the way I've commanded you. So this is very deep. Everyone with me? This part is very, very practical part for us all to take from tonight. The idea is that when Moshe went to Har Sinai, 40 days and 40 nights he was there. His job was just to pick up the Torah that Hashem had given him or prepared for him, it should have taken 3 days, 4 days. But we believe that the 40 days and 40 nights that Moshe was there, it wasn't just that. It was Hashem also giving him the commandments, but explaining it to him. So I'll give an example, right? In last week's parashah, right? Last week's parashah was Ekev. Ekev was the second parashah of Shema, which also talks about putting on tefillin. So it says, the commandment of putting on tefillin. It says, you shall put this box on your hand, and between your eyes or on your head, you shall do it. Now here's my question. What color should this tefillin be? What if I want to do green tefillin? Is it allowed or not allowed? What if I wanted to, have, inside of it, I want to put my own divisions? No, how many divisions should it be? What time can I put on? Do I put on Shabbat? Do I not put on Shabbat? At what age can we start putting on tefillin? There's so many questions that nowhere do we see any of these explanations for. So we believe that what happened, Moshe went to Har Sinai. Hashem told him there's this mitzvah of tefillin. That mitzvah of tefillin in 5 words was written in the Chumash that we read from every Shabbat. But the explanation, the details, now Hashem said, now Moshe, let me explain to you how to keep tefillin. Hashem explained to him, gave him all the rules. Moshe came down and explained that. He says, when you guys read this is what this means. That's why it was called the oral Torah. It was passed down generation after generation. It says these are the explanations that Moshe got from Har Sinai, and he explained it. Came to a point where the Jewish people, their religiousness was drowning in some ways. The idea was that if they don't write down this oral Torah, it's going to become forgotten. So that's why you look around the bookshelves, we have all these Gemarot, which is just the explanations of things that were given down at Har Sinai. So this is what it was. The same thing is with the laws of shechitah. We have so many rules of shechitah. When Moshe says, the way I've commanded you, saying all the rules of shechitah, Hashem commanded Moshe. Moshe came and explained to the Jews, the knife has to be this sharp. What happens if the knife isn't sharp? What happens if the animal has this blemish and that blemish? Can you do shechitah on it? Can you not do shechitah? What's kosher? What's not kosher? We know the kosher industry is a whole world. We have mashkiachs. All these different rules was actually explained. But what would happen, and I'll end this part with this, what would have happened if Hashem had written, or Moshe had written all these things in the actual Chumash? On Shabbat when we do Hagbah, One person couldn't do Hagbah. We would need 10 people to hold the Torah and do Hagbah, because instead of the Torah being 50 pounds, it would be 5,000 pounds. If every single detail was supposed to be written inside the Chumash. So Hashem gave kind of the summarized, abridged version in our written Torah, and the oral Torah has all the explanations, of where to go. Instead of it taking us 30 minutes to read the weekly Torah portion on Shabbat in the shul, it would take 4 hours to read the weekly Torah portion if all the details had to be incorporated. So that's another thing to keep in mind of the significance of the oral Torah and how we can't really understand the written Torah without the Talmud, without the explanations brought down. We move on about the prohibition against blood. The second aliyah, it says, "Rach chazak levilti achol adam ki adam hu nefesh." It says, be strong not to eat the blood, for the blood is the life. The blood of an animal is the nefesh. Very deep idea. So we know there's a prohibition from here that a Jew cannot eat blood of an animal. More than that, there's a mitzvah of covering the blood as well. When an animal is slaughtered, there's kisui adam, covering the blood. But it's interesting because it says, be strong not to drink the blood. You have to be strong not to eat the blood. The rabbis deduce from here, kal v'chomer, meaning, if Hashem is telling us, Moshe is telling us as well, through Hashem, you have to be strong, you have to make yourself strong to not eat the blood, which naturally a human being despises. Eating blood is not something fun or enjoyable, it's disgusting. So if you have to be strong for a mitzvah like that, how much more a person should always, if all the mitzvot that we naturally lust after, a person has to say let's go, I could do this, pump yourself up, tell yourself it's not going to be easy, but I could do it. To understand that mitzvot, it's okay if they're difficult. Now the pasuk moves on. Shomor v'shamata et kol ha'dvarim ha'ela ki taseh hatov v'yashar b'nei Hashem Elokecha. Listen to the English. Observe and listen to all these words. For you shall do what is good and upright in the eyes of Hashem your God. Very interesting. The Torah doesn't say do what is legal. It says do what is good and upright, meaning that this is a foundation to Jewish ethics and morals. Hashem in the Torah, there's not every single circumstance is not written out of, how should you react in this situation and that situation. Meaning, of course, there's rules, but there's always things that the Torah did not mention. For example, a person goes to a supermarket. There's no rule anywhere in the Torah that says if you're waiting in a line, it's okay to cut to the front and skip the whole line. It doesn't say that. So the person says, well, who says I can't do it? But it says here, moral ethics. Do what's upright. What is normal? People see you with a kippah, people get upset at you, people have bad feelings towards you. They say, if this is how a Jewish person should act. There's so many areas in the Torah that it's not clearly written out. This pasuk is a source that act like a mensch. Think about what naturally should be. There's a famous line that the Gemara talks about. It says, Nevela b'shut harabim, meaning there's a person who could keep every single commandment in the Torah and still be like a dead carcass in the middle of the road. Meaning you keep every single commandment of the Torah, but you're still a dead carcass. Why? Because you find ways to say, but God never mentioned this thing, so therefore I could do it. For example, someone who's a glutton, who just goes, Hashem says eat. It's a mitzvah on Shabbat to eat. But then a person goes and he has 8 steaks. The Torah never says don't have 8 steaks. But again, a person is bringing themselves down. So that's why we see there's a bigger picture that it says, that a person has to be careful. And it says, by the way, very interesting, and you shall do what's right in the eyes of Hashem. Meaning, society changes its values. There's one generation that's going to come and it's going to say, slavery is very bad. And then another generation that says slavery is very good. If morality is based off humans, it's going to change. There's one generation that's going to come and say gay marriage is very bad, and another generation is going to say no, gays are very good. There's going to be a generation that's going to say eating meat is very good, it's very great for you, it's healthy for you. There's another generation where people are going to come and say, no, it's cruel to the animals, it's like this. So who should you listen to? If we based our morality off human beings, the truth is always changing. Truth by default is the truth. It shouldn't change. Either this is good or this is bad. This is right or it's wrong. So the pasuk tells us, don't do what's right in your eyes. You're not the one to decide morality. Morality is by God 3,000 years ago, 5,000 years ago. What was given to us, at the Torah, at Har Sinai, that Torah is what's there forever. So that's the second aliyah. We move on to the third aliyah. Hishamer lecha pen tinakesh acharehem uven tidor shalaluhem lomor echa yavdu hagoyim ha'elet Elohem ve'esechen gamani. So now the Torah gives us a warning. Moshe gives us a warning, beware, lest you be drawn after them, and inquire about their God, saying, how did these nations worship? I too will do likewise. So again, the Jewish people are about to enter Israel. There's a lot of pagans, a lot of the Zara there. It says, don't let your mystery get to your head. Meaning, it's like a person wanting to do drugs, okay? He says, I don't want to be a druggie. I for sure don't want to be like that person on the street who has to, shoot up some heroin. I don't want to be that person. But, everyone's talking about this new drug, let me try it. Let me give it, once or two times. And then you enjoy it. It's fun. You see nothing happen to you. You try it again, a second time, a third time. And then a person looks back 3 years later. It's like, what happened? How did I get from here to there? The drive is so intense that it gets you. Here, Hashem is saying too, is that you see these things, you see these people, you see these things. Don't let your curiosity say, oh, look, let me inquire about their gods. Let me look into it. Let me try it. Let me give it a chance. Don't do that. And we read in the previous aliyah of destroy it, abed ta'abedun completely. Don't even leave a remnant behind of it, because we know, just like any other thing, you could get sucked in so easily. By the way, we mentioned this, I think, 2 weeks ago, that we don't really understand what avodah zarah is today, because very deep, very stuff. We could read about this more in the Talmud, but it says that there was a big drive, a lust, the same lust that a person has today to be with, in terms of relationships, to be with to other sex. A husband has for a wife has for a husband. That lust that a person has, that's the feeling that a person had for avodah zarah. So when they saw it, they were just driven by it. The rabbis prayed. They said it's too hard for the generations, and that taiva slowly went away. So you can imagine how difficult it was of a test in those days. The Torah moves on to another very interesting topic that we've also mentioned before, which is don't add or subtract from the Torah. Everything that Hashem commands you shall do. Lo tosef alav velo tigra mimenu. Do not add to the mitzvot, do not subtract from it. This is one of the clearest statements of the Torah, that don't mess with the Torah. Meaning, we say Torah Hashem Tamima. Hashem's Torah is perfect. If something is perfect, that means it doesn't need to be changed. If something is unperfect, then you're right, you need to fix it. You can make it better, you can change it. The Torah, the reason, and I've said this before, is that the other nations of the world, the Christians, you could chat GPT me later, Google me later, have hundreds of different editions of the New Testament. So you say, which one's the right one? Is it the King James Version? Is it this version? Is it this version? Which version is the true version? If it's really prophecies and given deep, then only one of the stories could be true. You can't have two different versions of the same story. But the Torah, I said this before, we're way older. We're 2,000 years. We're thousands of years older than Christianity and Islam. And if you go to Iran, you go to Thailand, you go to any place in the world, and you open the Aron and you look, our Torah is the same Torah anywhere you go in the world. Because we're so careful that even on Yom Kippur, by the way, this is a halacha. Imagine it's Yom Kippur. Everyone is fasting, and all of a sudden they pull out the Torah to read the portion of that week, and all of a sudden they see one of the vavs, a part of the tail is like a little bit cut off. It's erased. You have to stop, close the Torah, and if you don't have any other Torah, there's no Torah reading on Yom Kippur. Say, so what? So what? You know what that verse is. You could just open up the Chumash and you could read it still without it. It's like, no. The entire Torah becomes pasul if one word, one letter is a little bit crooked, if it's a little bit of it is cut off. And that's what's kept our Torah so real and so legitimate, that we only have one version today and it's all there. Then we move on to another very interesting topic. This is why I love Devarim. It just goes from one topic to another. It's like, you never get bored. You go from this topic to that topic, welcome. You just keep going from topics to topics. So this is what the next part is. Ki yakum bekirbecha navi o cholem chalom. The Torah is warning you. Imagine a navi comes to you. A navi comes to you. If arises among you a prophet or a dreamer of dreams, and suppose he predicts ot umofet, a sign or a miracle, and it actually happens, should you listen or not? And the Torah says no. And this is a very deep idea. Why? Hashem gives the answer. The pasuk says our Torah gives us the answer. Ki minaseh Hashem elokechem etchem ledat heshivchem oavim et Hashem elokechem. Why? Why is this God sending this way? For Hashem your God is testing you to know whether you truly love Hashem your God. It's an incredible lesson. All this is a test. Everything in life is a test. But the idea that miracles don't prove truth. We know that in Egypt, Pharaoh's people were able to do miracles. But what was their end? So what? Today, by the way, there's rabbis who say there are people, these fortune tellers, they go, you pay them some money, they say some things, I don't know, some of them are baloney. But there are people around in different countries that still have some of this, it comes from a place of tumah. They still have this ability to do some magic, whatever it is. But we don't see this magic and say, oh wow, just because they did this magic, now whatever they say is true. That power, Hashem allowed it to be in the world. So Hashem is saying, be careful. When you see these people come out and do these things, don't get tricked from it. The Rambam, Maimonides, says in Youssefzadeh Torah that our belief even in Moshe is based on the public revelation at Har Sinai. Meaning, Hashem came in front of everyone, Moshe was there. Those are the things that make us believe in the Torah and Moshe. It's not based on miracles. So, this is crazy because if you think about it, the Torah was given to us, thousands of years before Christianity. What happened? We know that Christianity is built off a story of a person who says, there's stories about him that he walked on water and he did this miracle and that miracle. And even throughout history, there's been many people, even Jewish leaders who've come up. Some of you guys know what I'm referring to, hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago, who said, they try to do a miracle, they try to inspire people to change and veer away. God is saying, this is a test. Don't fall for this. Even if you see them do something, that it doesn't mean, that it's gonna be careful. And it says, Ki yasidcha achicha o bincha o bitecha o ashet chakecha o recha asher bekenavshecha. Now it's talking about being tested by family members. If your brother, your son, your daughter, your beloved wife, your closest friend, if any of these people come to make you kind of veer away from God, through whatever means it is, avodah zarah, whatever means it is, it says do not follow. Now why mention family? The strongest spiritual test sometimes that a person can go through is pretty much by being pushed by their family. Some people here knew I used to teach in Beverly Hills High School, public school. And some of these boys used to tell me, and they used to hint, that their biggest barrier to becoming more religious is their family. Meaning their parents would be willing to spend $400 for a piano session, for swimming lessons. They'll pay all the money they need to for an English tutor. But if the kid wanted to go to a Jewish summer camp, if the kid wanted to, go to Jewish school, or any other thing, they wouldn't be willing to invest it. I've met with parents, who their child was going to, become a lawyer. They were going to school. They just wanted 2 months to go to Israel for a program to become more religious. And the parents fought tooth and nail. Because this idea, whatever we want to call it, they're scared the kid's going to become more religious than themselves, what's going to change. And the parents don't want to. Another boy I remember who told me that whenever he would try to keep Shabbat, he would come to my classes, his family members would make fun of him. He says, oh, look, you're a rabbi now. You now keep Shabbat. Now you want to be this holy person. Now you want to be this. Look, who are you? And he would feel embarrassed. He'd feel awkward. And it was so hard for him to just try to keep Shabbat. So this idea that sometimes the biggest hindrance to someone is their own family, people who are around them, that are close to them. So Hashem says loyalty to Hashem, Moshe is saying, must ultimately come before loyalty to any human relationship. Hashem takes precedence. We know there's that, by the way, when it comes to keeping Shabbat, it says you shall respect your parents, and then afterwards it says that you shall keep my Shabbat. So what's the connection between respecting your parents and keeping Shabbat? Why are they back to back? It says because at the end of the day, even if your parents come and tell you, I want you to break Shabbat, and you have a commandment to listen to your parents, you have to honor them. But when it comes to anything that's drawing you away from God and religion, you can't listen to your parents. That's one exception of a time where you don't listen to your parents. It's okay to disrespect their command if it's taking you away from God. Here we see that again. We move on to the fourth aliyah. This is a very interesting aliyah. I know I said that about all the aliyot, but this one specifically. If we're going to talk about the topic of mourning, which is when someone passes away, kashrut, kosher animals, birds, fish, insects, nevela, and it seems like what are all these random things have to do? And there's one theme. A Jew is different because he belongs to Hashem. And listen to how this is all gonna tie in. The aliyah opens and ends with these words: Ki am kadosh atal Hashem Elokecha. For you are a holy, special nation to Hashem your God. You guys ready to increase your self-confidence, your self-esteem about being a Jew? Listen to the words of the fourth aliyah. This is, if I said to someone, I want to give a prep talk, listen, you're special, you're a great person, you guys would be like, okay, he's just saying whatever he wants to make me feel good. But if it comes from God himself, it's a much different level. So listen to how these words go. Banim atem la Hashem Elokechem. You are sons, you are children of Hashem, your God. Wow, that's pretty deep. That's pretty beautiful. Before giving any commandment, Moshe reminds them of their identity. Don't obey God because you're afraid. You belong to Hashem, you're his child. So you should listen to your father because you're his son. Hashem loves you. And then listen to the next words. Ki am kadosh ata Hashem Elokecha, uvecha bachar Hashem liot liam segula mikol amim asher al pnei adama. I'll read the English. For you are a holy people to Hashem your God, and Hashem has chosen you to be for him a treasured people from among all the people that are upon the face of the earth. Wow. So what's the question? Does Hashem only think about the Jewish people, or are there other nations of the world also important? A good way to think about this is, imagine there's a king. A king cares about everyone, every citizen in his nation. He cares about them all. But imagine the people in his own city, or his own children living in his own house. He has a special feeling towards his own children living in his house than the person, 30 miles away who's still part of his thing. So Hashem created all human beings. He cares about all of them. But he himself refers to Beni Bechor Yisrael, you are my firstborn Israel, you made a promise to the Jewish people. So it's not, haughty to come and say, oh yeah, we're the chosen people. Oh yes, we are the one that Hashem chose. Because Hashem himself says it. The same people, most of the world believe in our Torah. The main religions, both Islam and Christianity, believe in our Torah. It says right here that Hashem is saying that He chose us. Now, of course, that means we have more responsibilities. Just because we're given that prioritism doesn't mean that there's no responsibilities. But the words are fascinating, and then it comes up to now the halachot, because it's not random that Hashem now we're told that Hashem loves us. You want to know what the next commandment is in this pasuk? Very interesting. Lo titgodedu v'lo tasimu karcha beineinechem lamet. There's a commandment in the Torah that if someone lo aleinu passes away, a family member, that you're not allowed to cut yourself, and you're not allowed to make a bald spot between your eyes. So it sounds pretty weird, but this is what the pagans used to do. Someone in their family used to die, they used to get a knife and cut their skin, cut themselves. They used to come and make a bald spot between their eyes. This was actual practices. And you can read it in history books that talk about pagan culture. You could read this was, and by the way, in some cultures, even today, there's such a thing, that they hurt themselves when someone passed away. It says you shall not do this. It's a mitzvah in the Torah, commandment that restricts a person from doing this. It goes back to the theme. Why? Because you're a child of Hashem. And why else? Because Judaism recognizes this idea of grief, but it rejects this idea of depression. You see, so many times I see in chats and other places on WhatsApp, someone lo aleinu, they announce, someone passed away. And you see even Jewish people write R.I.P., rest in peace. That's a big mistake. As Jews, we should never say those words, rest in peace. You never see or hear a rabbi go and say, oh, your loved one passed away, R.I.P. It's a very non-Jewish thing that the Jewish people, learn and they say. Why? Because we believe that when someone passes away, they're not resting. Here in this world, we're resting. We're chilling, we're taking it easy, we watch our Netflix, we do our thing. This world is a rest. Pirkei Avot says, Ha'olam hazeh pruzdar lo'olam haba. This world is a hallway to the next world, meaning that this world is just a temporary hallway. The main action begins in the next world. So if someone really believes in God, he knows that there's a next world. The Torah itself, in last week's parsha, I believe, it says, you should do all these things. Why? So that I shall reward you at your end. So let me ask you, what's the reward? So when you die, your end, you get a nicer plaque at your funeral. That's your reward for all the mitzvot you kept. Your reward that Hashem refers to, that at your end I'm going to reward you. What does that refer to? We know obviously the Zohar, the Torah, the Oral Torah, the whole world, the whole chapter of the next world that we believe. So the promise of the reward is in the next world. So when someone passes away, we don't cut ourselves because it's a lack of emunah. You're coming and saying, I don't believe there's a God. I don't believe there's a next world in this world. So I'm in despair. I'm going to cut myself. I'm going to act like these other nations. You're a leader. You shouldn't do that. Now, beautiful lesson is that Judaism does not say not to cry. In fact, if you look at the Torah, when Avram died, when Yaakov died, when Yosef died, when David HaMelech died, when Moshe, for all these people mourned. It says that the people took some time, they cried. We have something in Judaism where when a person passes away, there's Shiva, 7 days, 30 days. The idea is that there's a time you reflect on what happens, but the tears are not tears of depression, because we believe and we know that the soul went to a better place. It fulfilled its mission in this world, but we'll miss that person. We'll miss what we had in this world. So you cry to remember, what we missed, and to, get that feeling of, thinking back of what we had. But that's what it is. So we see that this idea of Hashem saying, you're a leader to the next rest of the nations. And now we move on to kashrut. You guys with me? Kashrut? You guys want to hear some of the most powerful proofs of knowing that our Torah is legit from God and our Talmud is from God? Here we go. These are the animals that you may eat. And now, it gives us the signs. A kosher animal has to split its hoof and chew its cud. Both are required. Okay, so there's thousands of different types of animal if they have both of these. But then the Torah comes and says something that it did not have to say. The Torah could have just left us and said, these are the two signs, okay, now go figure it out. But the Torah took it a step further and said a very I'm gonna do this scary statement if the Torah was not legit. It says, and be aware that there's 4 animals that are going to try to trick you. Hagamal, which is the camel, Harnevet, which is the hare, Hazavon, which is the irex, and the Chazir is a pig. These 4 animals, be careful because they have one sign but not the other. Meaning that the Torah is coming giving a very confident statement that every single other animal in the world will have both signs. They'll either have both signs or they'll have 0 signs. 4 animals of the tens of thousands of animals that exist in the world will only have one sign and not the other. Now, let me ask a question. When the Torah was written, Moshe was there, okay? They were near Israel. You talk about the Jordan, Egypt. Did they go to Antarctica and look at the polar bears? Did they go to the jungles of Africa and look at all the animals and check every single animal? So if the Torah was made up, if I was making up a Torah and I wanted to be, sell a Torah, why would I come say such a statement? All it takes is a 5th animal is found, and then all of a sudden, you say, look, we found the 5th animal, so it must be the Torah was not given by God. But if God created the Torah, God knows what He created. So God could come and tell Moshe, these are the 4 animals you should be careful about, because God knows that forever, you could search every jungle in Africa, you're never going to find a 5th animal that has one sign or the other. No human could have predicted this. This is another beautiful sign and explanation for us to remind us that the Torah must have been given by God, and only God knows that this. And I'll take it even a step further. Why take a risk? Why take a chance? So that's one. Ready for the second one? Back to back. Now that this aliyah talks about animals, what's kosher, what's not. Now it talks about fish. Kol asher lo sanpir v'keshet tochelu. Now, what's a kosher fish? Any fish that has fins and scales are kosher. Now, the Torah doesn't say this, but now the Talmud comes and says, by the way, let's make your life a little bit easier. The Talmud. It says that any fish that has scales will have fins. So that's a very sharp statement. The Torah is basically saying that if you go and you find scales in a fish, don't worry about looking for fins. Because if it has scales, it's for sure going to have fins. That's a crazy statement. Because how do you know all the fish in the world? I had to look this up before the talk tonight, just to make sure I'm not wrong. How many miles deep do you think the ocean goes in some places of the world? How many miles? Very deep. So I had to look that up. 7 miles deep. So if you think about it, how far is a mile from here? We think about, just think about distance-wise. A mile from here to Beverly Center is what, maybe a mile? A mile and a half? Imagine 7 miles just going deep into the ocean. And every single layer deep that you go, there's new fish that don't exist on the higher level. The temperature can make them alive. Do you know how much of the world is water? Like 60-70% of the world is just water. So when Moshe wrote down the Torah, or let's not say Moshe, this was by this specific proof, different than the animal proof, was in the Gemara. So when the rabbi sat down to write the Gemara, you think they said, let's go get some submarines. Let's go beneath the ocean. Let's search every single fish. Okay, now we can confidently say that any fish that has scales will for sure have fins. Why take a chance? Because you find one fish that has scales and doesn't have fins, and all of a sudden you're disproven. Millions of fish have been discovered. Every single day there's new fish that are discovered. Fish are way more than animals. There's so many different types of fish that are discovered, and still there's no fish that has this. Fantastic. Then it talks about birds. Unlike, by the way, just to close that chapter, we say these things and we move on, but it's powerful because this is our Torah. No matter what other people will try to say, have them disprove this. They can't, because this is another proof that only God could have written our Torah. Our Torah is divine from Hashem. We move on to now birds. So with birds, it doesn't come and give us a list. It doesn't come and give us signs. It just tells us which birds are allowed, which birds are not allowed. Usually, birds of prey, birds that attack other birds, those are excluded. The Ramban explains because those type of birds are aggressive. It's not good to eat them. Remember, you are what you eat. So don't eat these type of birds because they're more aggressive. Then it talks about flying insects. V'chol sheretz ha'of tamehu lachem. Every flying, swarming creature is impure for you. Here you go. Wash your salads well. Wash your broccoli well. Wash your strawberries and blackberries and blueberries pretty well. Because we see that it says that these little flies, these little bugs that are in this, they're all thing. And then it says, Lo tochlu kol nevela, you shall not eat a nevela, which is pretty much like a dead carcass. But by the way, the halacha is that if you let's just say there was an animal that died without a proper shechitah, and you own it, it's a lot of money. So what are you going to do? Throw it in the trash? You're allowed to sell it to a non-Jew. So the idea was, because the idea of the Torah was not to make you go broke and make life very difficult. Hashem understood that there's times, that things don't work out, but the whole idea is it's a spiritual thing. Meaning there's no poison to the animal because it died without shechitah. People think that kosher is this thing that the rabbi comes and blesses it. Like, it's not that. It's very spiritual, deep, that if you do shechitah the correct way, then it's fine. If not, it could affect your neshama. So you can give it to a goy, because again, they don't have this commandment, but you yourself are commanded not to do it. And then the aliyah ends up with a very famous line, the fourth aliyah, lo tevashal gedi b'chalev imo. Some people here spend 6 months learning about this one pasuk. You shall not cook a kid in its mother's milk. This is the source for not eating meat and milk together. Now this verse appears 3 times in the Torah. And Chazal learned from this, the fact that this had to be repeated 3 times, it teaches 3 different lessons. Number 1, you're not allowed to cook meat and milk together. So you have a fire on, you have a pot, you throw in a piece of chicken, you throw milk, you can't cook that together, number 1. Number 2 is you can't eat the mixture. So now that you cooked it, you can't eat it. And number 3, you can't benefit from the mixture. So you can't even feed it to your dog, you can't even feed it to your maid. Once you cook the meat and milk together, you can't have them cook forever. So this is the idea of not eating meat and milk together, found in this 4th aliyah. We move on to the 5th aliyah, and it's about the idea of aser taser et kol tevot zarecha. Double language, talking about maser, giving of the maser. So 10% of our money should go to charity. That's for the regular person. Some people say if you're that wealthy that you can pay all your expenses, you live a comfortable life, you have $50 million in your bank, you should probably give 20%. But again, let's just say 10%, okay? Now, it says aser te aser. This is a very interesting point, that it says the double language. Chazal say, why does it say twice aser te aser? Listen to this. The Gemara famously says, give the 10% it so that you will become wealthy. Meaning many times in life, you're not allowed to test God. You can't say, God, I'm going to put on tefillin, and you instead, give me children. Or you could say in the zuchut of me putting on tefillin, give me children, but I'll only do it for this sake. Or I'll test you to see if you'll give me children. You can't do that. But with Maser, you could. You could say, God, I'm going to test you. I'm going to give charity, and I'm going to calculate how much I make, and I'm going to compare it to last year how much I made. There's a promise here in the Torah that says you're going to give me more. I know many, but I know one specific Jew who doesn't keep many of the commandments, but he's promised to me that times that he has given Maser, he's seen his business boom, and times that he didn't take it so seriously, he didn't really give the 10%, he didn't really keep an accounting, that his business didn't do so well. So even though he doesn't keep so many of the commandments, he makes sure to give his 10%. The idea was, this is again talking about you shall eat before Hashem your God, so that you will learn to fear Him, Hashem your God, all your days. So it's referring to going to Yerushalayim for the Shlosh Regalim, to learn. Why? Because Yerushalayim, back in the day, imagine you get your Maser, you get all these things, you go to Yerushalayim, you do these things. It became like the nation's classroom. What do I mean? All the families traveled there. They ended up meeting Torah scholars. They saw the Beit HaMikdash, and they came back spiritually elevated. So that's what it says, Leman Tilmad. You take these Maser, you go there for the Shlosh Regalim. People used to go, in the end of the parashah, I'll talk about Shlosh Regalim. Why? Because it's going to change you. Again, the Torah is logical and understanding. It says, let's just say you have too much produce to take all the way with you to Yerushalayim. You live far, far away. Your leg hurts. You have arthritis of your knee. You can't make it all the way to Yerushalayim. What could you do? The Torah says, redeem it into money and bring the money to Yerushalayim. Send it with someone and purchase food there. So there was a second option always. And then it says, V'samachta, and basically you shall be happy with all the mitzvot you say. Again, doing the mitzvot with happiness. We move on to the 6th aliyah, again talking about charity. It says, Ki patuach tiftach et yadecha lo. Now it's talking about maser ani. So it means there's a poor person, going back to the 10%, the same kind of idea. It says, double language, Ki patuach tiftach. We see another double language. It says that the Torah doubles the verb, open, which means generously. The Rambam says, this verse is the foundation of tzedakah. And he says there's 8 levels of tzedakah. And what's the highest level of helping someone? There we go. Is making them self-sufficient. So for example, there's a famous saying is that, you'll probably say it better than I can, is you can give someone fish and you'll help them for one day, or you can teach them how to fish and they'll be fine for the rest of their life. The idea is that if you can find someone a job, you can help someone get out of their depression, whatever thing they are that they think they can't work, and you get them to work, you give them a job, it's much greater than just giving them the charity. So here's a question. We have this commandment of giving maser ani, giving money to the poor, giving the 10%. Why? Can Hashem just give money to everybody? Can Hashem just give people what they need? So why did Hashem make this commandment of giving? Tzedakah. A few very beautiful answers. Number one, it's to give us mitzvot and merit. Every single time you give tzedakah, you did a mitzvah. Number one, to give us merit. Number one. That's number two, is to change us. Meaning charity is supposed to make you more giving. And here's a very beautiful explanation. What is better for one to do? Imagine you have a beggar who comes to you and he needs money. Okay? You can say, every day I'll give you $1. Or you give him $100 up front. They're equal. You gave $100 either way. What's better, give $100 in one shot or give $1 a day? Chazal say give $1 a day. Why? Because yes, you're right, you're helping the guy regardless. But the mitzvah of charity is also for us to change us. Every day you open up your wallet, you take out that $1, you hand it to him. Naturally, what that did to you is it made you a giver. You did it 100 times. By the end of the year, you're now 100 times more of a giver than just giving one time $100. So we see the mitzvah of giving is also to make us, more giving in life. And then the third idea is just to remember that at the end of the day, money does not belong to us. Hashem gave us money. It wasn't like last week's parashah, which was all about humility. Don't think my hand, my work, I did this business deal, I made this investment and I became so wealthy. When you come and you give charity, you're saying, hey, this is God, this is holy money, this is God's money. I'm going to give back of what Hashem blessed me with. So it makes you that idea. And then it talks about the Jewish servant, Ki makar lecha achicha ivri v'avdecha sheshanim uveshana hashivit tishlachnu chavshi. So now it talks about if your Hebrew brother is sold to you, okay, he shall serve you for 6 years, and the 7th year he shall be free. By the way, it says achicha. So we think about slavery as what happened, 100 years ago and other slavery where people hid their slaves. It says it refers to your slave as achicha, your brother, because at the end of the day, I agree, but it's telling you. It doesn't have to say. It says, the person part of your nation, the people who you have. It says treat him that way. And it says lo tishachenu rekam, don't send him empty-handed. Meaning, and it says hanik ta'anik lo, you shall provide for him generously. The Torah is saying don't just release him, help him succeed. Going back to the same idea of make sure that he succeeds. And then it says v'zachartecha ki evet hayta beret Mitzrayim. Remember that you were a slave in Egypt. Why? Because remember, you were a slave in Egypt. You remember how it felt to be treated poorly. You remember how it felt to be a real slave. So don't do that to other people. And then the servant that chooses to stay, what do? You pierce his ear. Big question. What's this whole idea about you pierce the slaves that wants to stay longer, you pierce his ear? We talked about it previously. The idea is that the ear that pretty much heard at Har Sinai, that he says, you shall be for me, a permanent, you should be my slave. Hashem says you should be for me. He himself still chooses to be a slave to a human being. That ear that heard by Har Sinai, that ear should be pierced. But at the end of the day, the person has the ability to continue doing that. But he's kind of missing the boat. We're going to finish the last minute and a half with the 7th aliyah. We'll make it very quick, okay? The firstborn, you shall sanctify to Hashem. What does that mean? Of your animals, your flock. What's the significance of the firstborn sanctifying it to Hashem? You're remembering that everything that I have, that I own, that God gave me is from God. So the first one is usually the one you love the most. It's the most precious one. That's reason number one. Reason number two is because we know that Hashem spared the firstborns as well. So that became this idea that it's a memory of the miracle that Hashem did for us, for the firstborn Jewish people that He saves. And that's bring your best to Hashem. Meaning, if you want to serve God, don't bring the animal with the blemish, the animal that has a scar, the animal that has an issue. Don't bring that animal to serve God. Meaning, bring your best energy. And then it talks about the 3 chagim, and we end right here. And it says about Pesach. Guard the month of Aviv and celebrate Pesach to Hashem your God. Why does the first of the holidays Pesach? We know Pesach is not the first month. Really, Sukkot is the first holiday because Rosh Hashanah happens, and the first of the Shlosh Regalim is Sukkot. We've mentioned this before, we'll say it again. Everything started with Yetziat Mitzrayim. So even though Pesach happens later on of the months, but our entire freedom, that's where God took us from being slaves, serving nothing, to serving Hashem, our King. So therefore, Judaism really all is based off Yetziat Mitzrayim. That's why, all the mitzvot, mitzvah, tefillin, kosher, everything is Zecher Yetziat Mitzrayim, because that's where it all happened. And then it talks about Shavuot, v'samachta lifnei Hashem Elokecha, ata v'nicha v'itecha v'alevi v'ager asher yatom be'almana. And so talking about Shavuot, that you shall rejoice before Hashem, your son, your daughter. It talks about the Shavuot, and then Sukkot. Chag HaSukkot ta'aseh lecha, v'ayita ach sameach. You shall be fully joyful. And the pasuk ends off, Shlosh pamim b'shna yireh et kol zechorcha et pnei Hashem Elokecha. V'lo yireh et pnei Hashem rekam, ish kematnat yado ki v'rchat Hashem lecha asher natan lach. This idea that we say during the Shlosh Regalim, that the people used to go to Hashem 3 times a year, the Regalim, they used to go, the holiness, the excitement that they used to bring, their korbanah to Hashem, they used to go, the miracles they used to see, and used to make someone different. Shabbat Shalom to everybody.